The storm had already swallowed half the town when Ethan stumbled upon the little girl crouched beneath the flickering street lamp, soaked to the bone, shivering violently, and staring at him with eyes that looked too terrified to belong to someone so small. He didn't know her name. He didn't know why she was alone at nearly midnight. He only knew one thing with absolute certainty: nothing about his life would ever be the same after this moment, because the child who clung to him like he was her final hope carried a secret that would shatter everything he thought he knew about kindness, destiny, and the unpredictable ways a broken life can be pieced back together. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that touch the soul, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps more people find emotional stories like this. Ethan lifted the trembling girl into his arms, her small fingers gripping his jacket with desperate strength. The rain hammered down with a fury that felt almost personal, but he kept walking, shielding her with his body as best as he could. He had spent the last 4 years raising his own daughter, Lily, by himself after losing his wife in a car accident that had also left his finances in ruins. Every day had been a battle to rebuild their lives from scratch. He worked long hours at the local repair shop, took side jobs whenever possible, often slept barely 4 hours a night, and still somehow managed to return home with a smile for Lily, because she deserved more than the world had given her. But tonight, as he carried this lost little girl toward his truck, something inside him stirred a protective instinct he hadn't felt since the night he swore to keep his own daughter safe no matter what. The girl barely spoke. Her breaths were quick and uneven, and her gaze darted around like she expected danger to emerge from the darkness at any second. When he wrapped her in the dry blanket he kept in his truck for emergencies, she flinched, then slowly relaxed, as if realizing he meant no harm. Ethan noticed the tiny bracelet on her wrist, silver, delicate, clearly expensive, with a small engraved charm shaped like a moon. He could tell instantly this was not a child from around here. His town was small, working class, quiet. People didn't own jewelry that looked like handcrafted luxury. Immediately, alarm bells rang in his mind, but he pushed them aside. The priority was safety, warmth, and finding help. Back at his modest home, Lily rushed toward him the moment he walked in. She was 7, full of boundless energy and innocence, but even she froze when she saw the unfamiliar girl wrapped in the blanket. Ethan quickly explained she was lost and scared, and Lily nodded with an understanding far beyond her age. She grabbed another blanket, gently draping it around the girl's shoulders, and the lost child whispered something so soft Ethan almost didn't catch it. Her name. Her name was Arya. As the storm continued raging outside, thunder shaking the windows, Ethan made her warm soup, though she barely touched it. She seemed terrified of loud noises, sudden movements, even shows. Lily tried to make her laugh with one of her stuffed animals, and for a brief second, Arya's lips curved into the tiniest smile, but it vanished just as quickly. Ethan noticed bruises on her arms, small, fading, but unmistakably concerning. He took a deep breath, steadying the rising anger in his chest, and made a plan. First thing in the morning he would call the authorities, report everything, and ensure she was taken somewhere safe. But life had other plans. Around dawn, just as the storm eased into a soft drizzle, his phone buzzed with an alert, a news notification flashing across the screen. A billionaire philanthropist, CEO of a massive global corporation, had issued a desperate public plea. Her young daughter had gone missing. The photo beside the headline made Ethan's heart stop. It was Arya, the same eyes, the same bracelet. Suddenly, everything made sense, and nothing did. What was a billionaire's daughter doing alone in a storm in their small rural town? How had she gotten here? Who had hurt her? Why didn't she trust anyone? And why did he feel as if fate had placed her directly in his path? The next hours became a blur. The sheriff arrived, along with 2 detectives from a nearby city. They questioned Arya gently, but she barely spoke. Whenever they asked who took her or how she ended up miles from home, she closed her eyes tightly and shook her head, fear trembling through her entire body. Eventually, they concluded it was best to take her to the hospital for evaluation and wait for her mother to arrive. Ethan drove behind the police car, his heart heavy. Lily kept asking if Arya would come back to play, and Ethan told her gently that they didn't know, but they hoped she would be safe. When they arrived, the media was already crowding the entrance, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. Ethan shielded Lily and watched from a distance as security cleared the area. Moments later, A sleek black SUV pulled up, and a woman stepped out who radiated both power and devastation. She was breathtaking, tall, elegant, dressed in a tailored coat that told a story of wealth and influence, but none of that mattered in the moment. Her face was streaked with tears, and when she saw Arya being escorted inside, she broke into a run, sweeping the trembling child into her arms with such fierce relief that Ethan felt something ache deep in his chest. This was a mother who had feared the unthinkable. A woman whose world revolved around the tiny girl she now held as though she might vanish if she blinked. Her name was Isabella Hartley, a titan in the business world, a single mother raising her daughter alone while managing empires. The world saw her as unbreakable, unstoppable, a symbol of power. But right now, she looked like nothing more than a mother whose heart had been shattered and hastily glued back together. Hours passed. Ethan gave his statement, answered questions, and waited patiently as the authorities processed everything. He expected to leave quietly afterward, return home with Lily, and carry on with his life. He had done his part. He had helped a child in need. That was all. But Isabella Hartley had other intentions. When she approached him, her eyes were red but steady. She thanked him with a sincerity that startled him, her voice trembling, and Ethan found himself struggling to respond. She insisted he stay until the doctors finished examining Arya, explaining that the little girl had spoken one full sentence since her rescue. She wanted Ethan. Not the detectives. Not the nurses, not even her mother at first. She wanted him. Ethan felt something shift inside him. A mixture of concern, responsibility, and a strange, unexpected connection he could not explain. The doctors eventually confirmed Arya was physically fine, with older bruises, but no new injuries. Emotional trauma, however, was clear. They recommended therapy, safety, time. Isabella was grateful, overwhelmed, and yet clearly hiding something behind her polished professionalism. Ethan sensed it, but chose not to ask. It wasn't his place, or so he thought. Over the next week, everything changed in ways he never could have predicted. Isabella reached out, asking if Arya could see him again. The girl refused to sleep without holding the small stuffed animal Lily had given her, and insisted she felt safe with Ethan. Hesitant but compassionate, he agreed. Slowly, Arya began opening up, especially around Lily, who treated her like a sister from the moment they met. They played in the backyard, shared stories, and Lily even taught Arya how to draw hearts with chalk along the driveway. Isabella watched quietly during one visit, something soft and yearning in her expression. When she finally gathered the courage to speak, she confessed that Arya's father had been emotional, abusive, controlling, unpredictable, and dangerous. She had left him, fought for custody, and built her empire while protecting her daughter in silence. But last week, during a negotiation trip, Arya had been taken from their secure estate by someone hired by her ex-husband. Someone meant to send a message. Ethan felt sick hearing it. The fear in Arya's eyes, the bruises, the nightmares, it all made sense. Isabella admitted she had been terrified to report the truth publicly, fearing her ex-husband's powerful connection. But when Arya escaped from the captor's vehicle during the storm and disappeared, everything changed. She was willing to risk everything to get her child back. Their shared experiences wove an unexpected thread between them. Ethan's struggles as a single dad, Isabella's battles as a single mother living under the weight of power and danger, both raising daughters who needed more love than the world had given them. Days turned into weeks, and a fragile routine formed. Arya visited Ethan and Lily regularly under supervision, which eventually turned into dinners, then afternoons at the park. Their evenings where Isabella found herself lingering longer than necessary, drawn to the warmth of their small but loving home. She began opening up about her fears, her exhaustion, and the crushing loneliness hidden behind her public image. In return, Ethan shared stories of his late wife, his dreams for Lily, and the guilt that still clung to him from the accident he couldn't prevent. They found comfort in each other's vulnerabilities, in their shared devotion to their daughters, in the quiet understanding that formed without words. But fate was not done testing them. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and cast golden light across Ethan's backyard, Isabella arrived with a heaviness in her eyes he hadn't seen before. She hesitated, then told him something that stole the air from his lungs. Her ex-husband was threatening to take her to court, seeking custody, leveraging his wealth and influence, aiming to paint Isabella as unstable due to the kidnapping incident. He wanted to claim she couldn't protect Arya. She knew the truth. If he won, Arya would suffer. She also knew Ethan had become the one person Arya trusted most. Then she said something that shattered his understanding of reality. She confessed that years ago, before he married his late wife, before Isabella rose to her position of power, before their lives diverged, she had known him. Briefly. In another city. A fleeting but powerful connection that ended abruptly when life pulled them apart. And then she whispered the truth she had been terrified to reveal. Arya wasn't just the lost girl he'd rescued. Arya might be his biological daughter. Everything inside Ethan froze. The world narrowed to a single point of impossible reality. Isabella explained through tears that she had tried to find him back then, but circumstances, her controlling ex, her rise in the company, her father's illness had buried the possibility. She hadn't been certain. Not until Arya began drawing pictures of Ethan and calling him her guardian star, a phrase Isabella recognized from something Ethan once told her long ago. The truth had broken through the cracks. Ethan felt dizzy, overwhelmed by a tidal wave of emotions: shock, anger, confusion, hope, fear. The idea of Arya being his daughter shattered and remade something inside him all at once. Isabella pleaded for forgiveness, for understanding, for time. She wanted a DNA test. She wanted clarity. She wanted safety for Arya above all else. But Ethan's heart had already begun answering questions his mind couldn't articulate. Arya's trust, Arya's attachment, Arya's instinct to run into his arms. It all made sense. Before they could take the next steps, disaster struck again. Isabella's ex-husband, growing desperate and enraged, sent men to intimidate her. One night they tried to break into her estate. Arya hid in her room, sobbing uncontrollably, while Isabella held the door shut with all her strength. The security team intervened just in time, but the message was clear: this wouldn't stop. Terrified for Arya's safety, Isabella made a decision that would change everything. She brought Arya and their essentials to Ethan's house, explaining that Arya felt safer there than anywhere else. Ethan took them in without hesitation. Lily welcomed Arya with open arms, thrilled to have her friend and maybe sister back for the first time in years. Ethan's house felt full, warm, alive. Ethan and Isabella formed a silent pact to protect the girl between them, whether or not the DNA test confirmed what their hearts already knew. During those tense days, they cooked meals together, read bedtime stories to both girls, and kept watch during the nights. They found solace in shared fear, shared hope, and shared responsibility. Then the DNA results arrived. Ethan opened the envelope with trembling hands. Isabella held Arya close. Lily sat beside them, sensing the gravity of the moment. And there it was. Arya was his daughter. The truth hit him with the force of a lifetime's worth of love he never knew he'd lost. Isabella broke down in tears, apologizing repeatedly. But Ethan hugged her, assuring her that whatever happened in the past, the present was what mattered now: their daughters, their safety, their future. The court case that followed was brutal, public, and exhausting. Isabella's ex-husband fought viciously, slinging accusations, manipulating narratives, and using his resources to twist reality. But he underestimated one thing: a united family. Ethan testified with raw honesty, describing Arya's trauma and trust. Isabella fought fearlessly, backed by evidence, experts, and a fierce maternal instinct. And Arya, brave little Arya, found the courage to speak to the judge privately, telling him where she felt safe. In the end, justice prevailed. The ex-husband lost custody permanently and faced charges for his involvement in the kidnapping. Isabella retained full custody, and Ethan was legally recognized as Arya's father. Their lives changed overnight. Isabella offered to buy a bigger home for all of them, but Ethan declined. He didn't want her to replace anything about his life. He wanted to build something new with her, not be absorbed into her world. She understood. Together, they renovated his house instead, creating space for Arya, for Lily, for a family formed from chaos and fate. The slow, tender bond between Ethan and Isabella deepened into something undeniable, built on shared wounds, shared love, and shared hope. They didn't rush. They didn't force anything. Love grew naturally, quietly, like morning light creeping across a dark room. Months later, on a warm spring afternoon, Ethan watched Lily and Arya run through the yard, their laughter filling the air like music. Isabella stood beside him, her hand brushing his, and for the first time in years, Ethan felt whole. Truly whole. He realized that life had taken everything from him, only to give him more than he ever imagined: a second daughter, a partner, a future brighter than he ever dared to dream. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps keep these emotional stories alive. Special request before you go: comment family always finds a way if this story moved you.